The Bitcoin Group, the British sequel. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the worst British accent, the hardest parody to pull off. Tom is away this week, and you know what that means. No CoinDesk articles. And now I'm doing an impression of Tom, doing an impression of me. How very meta. Nice to see you all, panelists. I'm your tyrants for the day. Please introduce yourself. Megan Lords.
Hello, and thanks for having me. I'm from Bitcoin Not Bombs. I'm the editor, and I also do a show called Crypto Combos every Wednesday.
You got to really over-enunciate, like proper 1970s Monty Python reruns. Midas Marnie from MidasMarnie.com. Hello.
Hi there. This is Marnie from Midas Marnie. I have a weekly show on the World Crypto Network as well, and I am excited to join you guys today. I haven't been on in a while.
No, that's great. It's good to have you with us. Christoph Atlas from Anonymous Bitcoin Book.
Thanks so much for having me.
Good to see you. And we have a first-time new guest, Theo from Sound Wallet.
Hello, all you bloody viewers. I'm Theo. Go to bloody hell.
I'm loving this British meme. And of course, where would we be without Blake Anderson, who is a cryptographic economist, everyone?
Thank you for having me on the show. I'll have to try to fill in for Thomas and his awesome voice impersonations for the little tiny introduction time that I have, because I won't be able to keep it up the way that he does.
Very, very cool. Okay, well, first of all, I'm afraid we have some sad news. Yesterday, we heard that the hero of the cypherpunk movement, Hal Finney, passed away. Members of the Bitcoin community have been paying their respects on Bitcoin and Bitcoin Talk Forum, on some of the subreddits and on Twitter. And Hal was diagnosed with a fatal disease, ALS, in 2009, and soon after his passing, we received the news from the Extropy Institute's chat list that Hal has been cryopreserved in anticipation of a future cure. What do you guys make of this? Let's start with you, Blake Anderson.
I think it's absolutely devastating news. I think that with the ALS challenge going around and the public visibility of this, a lot of people got wrapped up in donating in the Ice Bucket Challenge, which is really good, but this is a very somber reminder of what a devastating defeat this disease can be for various people, and I think that it is appropriate for us all to pay our respects to a member of our community that we've lost, and as you can see, I'm a little bit more dressed up than I normally am for this episode, because I do want to show and communicate my respect for the devastating loss that our community has suffered.
Yeah, me too. I dressed up a little bit for the occasion. Theo Goodman.
Yeah, it's unfortunate news. Yeah, let's also remember that he also did some other things. He was part of, I think it was called Tron on Atari 2600, and also a game I used to play, Armor Ambush, on the 2600 Atari a long time ago. And you know, he was a real positive guy. You know, he smiled a lot, like we were talking about earlier. And I think his legacy, he contributed to the editing and finding bugs before Bitcoin had any dollar value. It was just a project. So he was into this thing before it had any clear profit motivation or anything like that. So I think we all need to remember that too.
That's right. Actually, he was one of the most positive people about Bitcoin when it was first announced, and he was also one of the first people to realize the impact it could have as a distributed database too. Christoph Atlas.
Yeah, this is sad news. My heart goes out to the Finney family. This had to be 5 very tough years for them. ALS is a pretty devastating disease. It takes usually adults, from what I understand, who are pretty healthy, and wastes them away over the course of several years, to the point where they're no longer able to move and no longer able to communicate in the way they did. Hal was reduced to eventually communicating through eyebrow movements, and I remember reading the article that this journalist wrote about him and saying, he got there to the interview and he was a little bit late, and Hal spent 15, 20, 25 minutes just communicating to the guy, don't feel bad for being late, and it took that long because he was doing this through eyebrow movements that would be communicated through a computer interface device. So that's going to be a very tough period of time for them, and my heart really goes out to them for all the heartache leading up to the death. Right before he was diagnosed, he was sort of in the peak of his health. He had just done a series of half marathons and marathons, and he was obviously very active in his work. But what a way to go out swinging in his life. I mean, some of the most important work that he'll probably ever do in the form of Bitcoin he did after his diagnosis. And he was continuing to program to the point where he could no longer type. He had to use these other kinds of muscle movements to communicate, and he was writing code that would better allow him to use these devices without typing on a keyboard. He was still writing code to facilitate himself as a programmer and as an intellectual, and that's, to me, is just incredible that he was able to maintain that level of productivity, enthusiasm, all throughout such a very difficult disease. That is really quite impressive. So I hope that moving forward we really can capture that enthusiasm, instill it within within ourselves. And I think we owe two things to Hal Finney at this point. One, I think, is we want to move Bitcoin forward as quickly as possible, because even if Bitcoin itself is not a cure for ALS, if it's not a mechanism for taking someone out of cryogenic preservation, if such a thing is even possible, it's going to be this technology that acts as a catalyst for those other technologies. There are going to be incredible medical technologies, incredible cures that are made possible because humanity is able to reclaim its financial system from villains who are slowing progress down to a near halt. And the degree to which we can push Bitcoin forward is the degree to which we can enable those other kind of technologies that can really help either Hal himself in the future, bring him back to life, or people that come into a similar type of situation. So I think that working on Bitcoin is very productive. And the other thing that we owe to Hal Finney is that we have to remember he went from the peak of fitness. He went from the peak of fitness to death in about 5 years, and he accomplished a lot in those 5 years. But what it tells us is that no matter what age you are, whether you're young or old, whether you have built up a lot of momentum and drive to accomplish in life, or whether you're in a bit of a rut, you could die. We're all eventually going to die, and some of us are going to die sooner rather than later. And so if we want to make our mark on the world, if we really want to have an impact, as Hal did, and I think to some degree we owe it to Hal and people like Hal to follow suit, there's no waiting for that. You don't know how much time you have left, so there's no waiting. You have to make it happen now. And I really appreciate that Hal has given me that much more drive and allowed me to pause and think about my ultimate mortality and how it's very important for me to get stuff done.
Well, that's an excellent tribute. Thank you, Christoph. Megan Lords.
Sorry, I'm kind of trying to hold it together after Christoph's. That was really beautiful, by the way. So I'm often at a loss for words when these things happen, and something that stuck out to me in Hal's interview in Forbes was his unconquerable spirit. You could really tell something that happens with ALS is, your nerves start to break down, and it's very hard for you to communicate. And something that stuck with me in that interview was how he was so positive, and you could see that shining through in his interview. And he was so much concerned with the future. It's hard for him to smile involuntarily. It was hard for him to smile for a picture. But whenever he was talking about Bitcoin with this journalist, he would just light up, and it was just such a beautiful thing to read. And I think Hal's choice to be cryogenically frozen says a lot about his outlook on the future. I think he has a lot of hope for the future, and he contributed to some of the most liberating technologies that we've seen come out in the last 30 years or so. And I think this is really important to keep in mind, and I'm going to kind of keep this brief. I think we should always be looking to the future, and as Christoph said, you know, you do only have one life to live, and you really when things like this happen, it really puts in perspective how short that time can be. And he was extremely productive his entire life, and even when he was suffering from this debilitating disease, and it's a very inspiring thing. And I hope he is eventually. I hope we find a way where we can unfreeze people in the future, and they can see, you know, the fruition of their works really come to life too. So I think we should always be looking to the future and keeping Hal in mind. When we look back on things like, you know, cryptography, PGP cryptography, and Bitcoin, and all of these other developments. So I wish his family the best. I'm definitely thinking of them. Must be a very difficult time for them, and you know, my thoughts are with them. And I think Hal would want us to be, you know, looking forward to the future in a very positive way. And you know, I think there is a lot of hope. There's a lot of hope in technology, and there's a lot of hope, especially in this space, with the people who are involved with it too.
Very fitting tribute. Marnie Melrose.
Yeah, I am always saddened to lose, you know, anybody, period, but especially somebody in tech, you know. And it's interesting how some of these diseases like ALS can attack people who are really, really intelligent. You know, if you look at Stephen Hawking, and I just really recently, the other day, probably about a week ago, I saw that new movie trailer for his movie, and it was just like, wow, it really, if you haven't seen that movie trailer, you have to see it, because it just like gets you right in the heart about, you know, people's spirit and how they can really, through the power of their mind, they can pretty much overcome and survive through almost anything. I mean, I can't imagine being stuck in a body and having my mind be as sharp and clear as a tack, but being unable to control it. And I would be really sad. You know, it's great that some of those people are so intelligent, you know, that's probably what really keeps them going. And probably what kept him going too is his intelligence and his curiosity, right? And I think if there's one thing that we can take away from that, is always, no matter what's happening in your world, having that intelligence and that curiosity to continue on and to think about great things and to push the human, you know, element forward in the world and our progress forward in the world. I mean, you see how many years Stephen Hawking's been in a wheelchair, and I don't want to make this about Stephen Hawking at all. I'm just using it as an example of the fact that you can have something so devastating happen to you, you know, and like Christoph was saying with Hal, you could have something so devastating, and yet what he did happened after he got informed of it. And I'm sure that his family is very proud for all that he's done, and I'm sure that they're suffering that loss, and it's never fun to lose somebody close to you, that's for sure.
Yes, I was reminded too of Stephen Hawking and how this affects people so badly. I was personally very moved by what happened on the Bitcoin Talk Forum. I only showed it briefly in the intro there, but just people just flooding in to pay their respects. And you know, when this is normally just such a troll fest as well, and people like being really, you know, suddenly everyone is just reminded of the seriousness of this. And actually, the link to this thread is in the description below. This is actually one of Hal's last posts, where he chronicles how he met Satoshi through the mailing list, how he worked on PGP, and you know, some of his experiences since his diagnosis. So take a look and learn from a great master. And also, another thing I wanted to say as well is that you please do check out the complete Satoshi at the Satoshi Nako Institute. He actually was dealing with Satoshi very early on. You've got some of the early emails here where they go through things, so I definitely encourage you to do that. Issue 2. Super Nintendo Lawski is on the charm offensive. He feels our pain and is committed to getting this right. In an article by Julia Toriansky on Bitcoin Not Bombs, she quotes the 90s game console by saying, "We're not the kind of agency that thinks we have a monopoly on truth and that we're always right. We feel strongly that a lot of the provisions in the proposed regulations, but we get that there might need to be improvements." And she says here, Julia makes the comparison between Bitcoin regulation and some of the past telecoms networks. But I wonder, is she right? Money may well be a form of communication, but it's also deeply personal in our culture, and it comes tied up with thorny issues such as terrorism, organized crime, and personal privacy. So let's start with you, Theo. What do you make of this?
I think that there are some similarities, definitely, and I think that in America the telecom was highly regulated for a long time, and you can compare it to other countries and about the speed of the how the technology would develop. America was pretty far behind. But I think in the article that you showed, what was more interesting to me, or what was more, I think what everyone needs to think about, is that it's kind of like, okay, we're going to offer you, we're going to pretend that we're listening to somebody, and we want to have these so-called suggestions. So we're saying, okay, we'll offer you more time for these suggestions that we're not going to listen to in the first place. So they've set it up as if they're open to listen to all these suggestions, but that's just bullshit, I think. I think it's just a little game. It's just a show to say, oh yeah, but we listened to people and we're not perfect. And if they come out, and I think that that's just it's just a show, and there is no good bit license. You know, people need to get around that whole thing. There is no good bit license. There's not gonna be any good that's gonna come out of this. You know, oh yeah, we've got a victory. We have more time. Yeah, who cares? That's not gonna really change any of it, in my opinion.
That is so cynical, so cynical. I can't imagine what our next guest, Christoph Atlas, is going to think.
Yeah, I mean, what would we do without Benjamin Lonsky to tell us how to Bitcoin? So it's interesting, right? Because the state, on one hand, doesn't really give a damn about what you have to say. You know, your preferences, your ideals, they don't really care. You're opposed to war? Too bad. We're taking your money and we're going to spend it on tanks. You don't like social welfare programs and keeping people in poor indefinitely? Too bad. We're taking your money and we're going to do that with it. And I think that there's definitely an element of that with Benjamin Lonsky and this bit license stuff, that you can submit any kind of edits or proposals or feedback or whatever you want to do to Benjamin Lonsky, and it's largely going to be ignored. But on the other hand, there is the kind of importance of an air of legitimacy with these type of government officials. I think ultimately Benjamin Lonsky, even if he's not elected, it's kind of a politician, right? He's not an elected politician, but he does political favors for people in order to maintain his position and to elevate other people to advantage. And so they do require a kind of air of legitimacy. They do require the majority of voters or interested parties to believe that these people have legitimacy, because otherwise they would just be, people would come out with their forks, their fork picks and their burning torches, and they would just chase them out of town, right? So they need the majority to allow them to do what they do. And Benjamin Lonsky is using the Bitcoin community to create that air of legitimacy. It's astroturfing. It's feigning interest in what other people have to say about his dictums. And I think it's a real shame that anyone in the Bitcoin community would grant that to him. I think we should try to make it very clear to voters, to journalists, to whoever is interested to say, whatever this guy does, he does not have our consent. He does not have our approval. He is not following best practices. He is trying to legislate against things that have not yet been invented yet. And he has not demonstrated any competent understanding of the things that have been invented to date. And it has nothing to do with what we wish to do with Bitcoin. We want to overthrow an unjust financial system. This guy is part of that financial system, and we're doing our damnedest to route around this little rat hole of regulation. And I think that's what we should focus on. We need to promote our dark wallets and our stealth addresses and our coin joins and whatever it is that we need to do in order to make Bitcoin work in spite of these people. And I think that, you know, the comparison to free speech is fairly apt because for the first time in human history, money is now just bits and code. And it's not code that's written by a particular guy in a particular building. You know, we've had digital money for a while. There's PayPal, that's kind of digital money. The Fed can type numbers into their bank accounts, and that's digital money. But it's digital money that's blessed by a certain pope of the dollar, and that's not the case for Bitcoin. And so if free speech is a matter of bits traveling over the wire and money is bits traveling over the wire, I think they're pretty much equivalent to this point, and we should just focus on making our speech ever freer and forget about losers like this guy.
Shocking, shocking. I just was not expecting that point of view from you at all, Christoph. Megan Lords.
Well, it's a good thing that the regulations already in place prevented those 5 major banks from being hacked. Oh, wait, no, that's not what happened at all. The hubris of Ben Losky is something that's so interesting to study because this is a guy who thinks that he's protecting consumers by putting forth this ridiculous legislation that tries to regulate something that hasn't even happened yet. And he can't even protect the banks from being hacked. And I think it's really important. What we try to do at Bitcoin Not Bombs is take back the Bitcoin narrative by any means necessary. And that's why I put Julia's post up there, because I think it made an excellent point. The thing is, you don't have to understand Bitcoin necessarily to know that regulations against it are not going to work. Just from a practical level, they're not going to work. They're not going to protect you. It's a horrid, horrid idea, and I think she made an excellent analogy comparing it to speech and comparing it to an int license, if there would have been a license regulating the internet. And I think this is a good point to bring up to people who maybe have heard of Bitcoin but aren't familiar with it and still view it as some kind of negative scheme of some kind. They're like, oh, the government needs to protect me from this. I think pointing out that, first of all, the government can't protect you. They can't even protect your bank account. And they especially won't be able to protect consumer information that's going to have to be, that's required to be collected by these regulations. What they're requiring people to submit just for the application process of the bit license is really bordering on complete insanity. I mean, they might as well be asking for vials of your blood or something, or urine samples. I mean, it's really insane how much prying they want to do into your personal life just to do business, just to apply to do business. You're not even approved yet. Just to apply to do business in the state of New York, you have to jump through all of these hoops. And so at the end, if you end up getting denied because they're like, oh, well, shit out of luck, we're just not going to approve you anyway, they still have loads of your information. If you choose to do business there, try to do business there, and that's really, really bad practice. It's going to make a lot more people vulnerable, and just as we've seen in these bank hacks, I mean, we don't even know how much personal information has been exposed in this yet. That's a really terrifying thing. They can't even use the regulations that exist to protect banks right now, and there's a bunch of information. I mean, hacks like these happen all the time, and when there's sensitive information involved that's very easy to access, and it's devastating for people. And I think you're going to see the same thing happen if these go through. And it really comes down to Ben Losky doesn't care what you think. He doesn't. I mean, he can extend the commenting period for another year. It's not going to matter because they think that they can control something, and really it comes down to they don't really understand it, but they think they can control it anyway because they're very comfortable with their place of power. That they've manipulated people into giving them on a lot of levels. And while I do wish the best for people trying to apply a political approach to dealing with this, I just don't see it as working. I don't think these are people to be negotiated with. To borrow something, I think it was George W. Bush, to quote him, I don't negotiate with terrorists kind of thing. That's kind of how I view people like Ben Losky, and that's kind of my policy with these people, is I view them as financial terrorists, and I don't want to negotiate with them. And Julie made a really good point that I think is easy for your average person to understand. That this is limiting speech. I think it was an excellent comparison. And it breaks it down to a very simple analogy, and a very beginner level comparison. And I think it's great because we are at a war right now when it comes to the narrative of Bitcoin. Are we going to let our enemies define it for us, or are we going to say, no, this is not yours, this is not for you to define, this is for us to define, and for us to resist the kind of crap that you're going to try to do. So yeah, Julie is great. She also does some really awesome videos too, and I think her approach of radicalism and pushing back, and also ignoring a lot of these regulations too, and the ones that are going to be coming. I'm sure you're going to see a lot of activity outside of New York too. I think depending on the state, it could be better or worse, but any kind at this point I don't really think is going to make people comfortable. I think people are getting to a point where they realize that the government can't protect them and that it's really on them to protect themselves. So I would hope that they would apply that same kind of thinking to Bitcoin. I hope that people will remain to be open-minded about it, and basically resist.
Excellent points. Marnie Melrose.
All right, well, I do have an opinion here. I'm Canadian, and we have always kind of thought of America as Big Brother. And there's a lot of countries that dislike America. And I'll tell you why. The fact is that they've gotten to a point where they think they are too big to fail. Okay? The government actually thinks that they are too big to fail. And yet you see countries that just freaking hate America. Like, they're willing to die, right? And so here's some interesting things that I'd like to point out. Obviously they're overreaching. They're the only country in the world that has citizen-based taxation, right? Except for Eritrea, a little tiny dinky country in Africa, and otherwise it's America. And so what's interesting is that they don't even realize that they are actually shutting out and angering more and more other countries. And they're also angering the producers and the movers of the shakers, right? So, yes, I read Ayn Rand. They're angering those people. So it's interesting. In 2013, there was a 221% increase in expatriation. Do you want to know what the State Department did as a result of that? They raised the price of expatriation from $450 to $2,350. That was their answer to so many people deciding that they wanted to leave the United States, right? And so here, one thing that I find so interesting, like now we see that, right? And then we see Ferguson, and we see this big, like, macho, I'm going to show you how powerful I am. And here's another thing that people don't really realize is that the Homeland Security can act against U.S. citizens on U.S. soil, right? And that's where they're getting all of this equipment from, by the way. They are not getting the equipment from the military. The military is actually run by a completely separate branch, and I used to date a Navy SEAL here in San Diego, and I know some of the SEALs here, and they are not happy with Homeland Security because, you know, the Army, the military, they can't act against U.S. citizens on U.S. soil. They cannot do that, right? And so the executive branch thought, oh, well, let's make this other entity called Homeland Security, and they can go and kill the people. I mean, give me a break here. It's just like, this is crazy, okay? And this is not just another example of Americans just going la-di-da, we're the biggest thing, and we don't care what you think. But the thing is that sooner or later, you know, there is going to end up being a revolution, you know, and the people, that's what's happening with Bitcoin right now. The revolution is a peaceful revolution where people are just like, I won't comply. I just won't comply because I totally disagree. I'm not going to fight you, but I won't comply, right? And like the three Chinese exchanges, they sent letters into Lasky saying, we don't want to deal with Americans if this is going to be the way. Look at Coinapult. They won't deal with Americans. They're just like, sorry, we're out. We just don't want to deal with you. And, you know, even the big banks, the ones that people love to hate, like HSBC, you know, they have actually gotten to the point where they kicked out all of the small businesses. A huge number of small businesses shut all their bank accounts down. I was one of them. And they said, you know what? America and the FACTA law requires way too much information. Other countries don't do this to us. We just don't want to comply. And so therefore, you stay off in your little walled world, and we'll just go on with ourselves. And, you know, the Indian and the BRIC countries, right, they're creating a whole other banking consortium so that they can bypass America. Trunks of internet are being created to bypass America. And I mean, you guys really need to wake up. This is just a small, like, little thing in just something that's building up hugely. So that's my opinion.
No, some great thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you think, Blake Anderson.
Well, I almost feel like the movie Network about how things are getting worse and worse and our world keeps getting smaller and we don't go out anymore and we say, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. And I've kind of kept the gloves on with Losky a little bit, but we need to start to point out the fact that he doesn't even understand what regulation is. Regulations and laws are not the same thing. We're supposed to have pretty much 3 laws with maybe some other overreach, and the 3 laws are supposed to be don't violate people's negative rights through assaulting them or harming them. They're supposed to be don't go and destroy or steal other people's property, and then don't get involved in contracts using duress or lack of mutual assent and lack of understanding and scam people. To say that regulations are laws and then to come through and to mess up what's going on as an unelected bureaucrat relative to people using math to usher in the age of information, that's amputating the financial hand of the West in New York, and people should be angry about this. Anger is the appropriate emotion here. And before I continue to get more angry, I wanted to say that Julia, who helped to write this piece, is a good friend of mine. She is an amazing person, and I'm so proud of the fact that she has continued to do research and produce content in this space. And she has contacted me very many times asking me about things that she wants more information about, whether it be the secure hashing algorithm or how different things work. I haven't been contacted by Ben Losky. He hasn't sent me anything. He doesn't care. What he wants to do is to put this giant deal forward where he gets everything that he wants, and then they're going to give us, you know, little tiny pieces of things that we need and then act like, oh, I'm the giant hero, the unsung hero of the day that came in and saved everybody. But like, let's talk about what regulations do and what regulations are. Regulations are supposed to be agreed upon between businesses to keep business regular, to keep the economy flowing, and to keep consumers safe. And when you have regulations that are imposed unilaterally by a third party, that opens you up to capture. Now, what does that mean? What is capture? Capture means when you have a third party that's not an individual, but just a group of people that's going to go unilaterally make things happen for others, that becomes capturable. That becomes, for sale to the highest bidder, and then the highest bidder comes in and says, oh, what do you know? We didn't work in the interest of, trying to donate money to these people to make it good for everybody. We donated money so that we could get back what we wanted to quash competitions, and then, oh, lo and behold, everything works like shit. And then everybody acts like it's some kind of a giant mystery when we've gotten away from what should be happening. So if we look at another space, let's say environmentalism. We all like the environment, and we all want the environment to be healthy. Let's look at what regulation has done there. We have regulation subverting the rule of law and saying that if you have property, your rights to go and be made whole when people damage your property are undermined by the regulation in the Clean Air and Water Act. And guess who's exempted? The giant oil and gas corporations. So the giant oil and gas corporations who pollute the most are exempt from this regulation that makes it so that they can go and damage property, and then you can't come back through and be made whole because there's a regulation that allows them to destroy your property to whatever extent they need to be successful for the good of the economy. And this is just so completely and thoroughly ridiculous. It reminds me of Bruce Fenton saying, oh, what, we're all supposed to reach out and work across the aisle with Ben Lawsky to help him make these changes to the regulations so that he can, push his package through? No, we don't want to work with people that are going to throw our friends in prison for using math, for making it so that the West can come through and continue to be this force of economic freedom. We're not a force of economic freedom. We are a force of economic stagnation. And what is going to happen is if we have these laws and these regulations that are conflated and confused with one another and people don't know what's going on, we're going to have a giant exchange in New York with a token substrate that doesn't work with the blockchain. It's going to be a fractional reserve nightmare. There's going to be another gigantic catastrophic collapse. And if, a cryptographic economist means anything, I don't know if it does. It's a name that I've given myself, but if that means anything, and if all the research that I've done equates to anything, it's that if that happens, it is going to blow up in our face. It's going to create these massive hardships, and you know who's going to be at fault? It's going to be Lawsky and/or the people that didn't come out and say he doesn't know what he's doing, he's not qualified, he's not elected, and this is a joke.
I highly encourage you to get mad, Blake. I highly recommend being mad. So the thing about good old Nintendo Lawsky is that he could just come here to the Bitcoin improvement proposal on GitHub and have his say where everyone else is instead of trying to claim the monopoly on it. Yeah, I completely support everything everyone has said. I would also say on Jules that she is a fantastic videographer and journalist. She has made this, the Declaration of Bitcoin's Independence. It is pretty awesome. She's got interviews with everyone, reading out sections of this thing. You need to go check this out. It's Brave the World on YouTube. Now, shall I do an exit question? What do you guys think? Obviously I haven't scripted this very well. So I think
no, it's good. I think do whatever you think you should.
I think exit question: how much longer is this guy going to troll us, Theo?
I think he's going to troll us for a while, and I think that he can for a while. I mean, New York is well known for its kind of being a kind of regulatory island. You can't have a big gulp drink. There's no MMA there, and they're known for their collusion with businesses and organizations as far as regulations. It's really nothing new, and they're big, and they have plenty of money, so they can go on for a while, I think, New York as itself. And so this guy will probably troll for a while. But, I mean, not all the states are going along with it. I mean, they're pro-regulation. So North Carolina has come out and said, we're just going to use the regulation we have now. You have to apply to be a money transmitter, blah, blah, blah. And that's it. We're not going to do this big bit license thing. They didn't say explicitly we're not doing bit license, but they're not going to build this crazy thing where you have to give blood in order to have a bit license or something like that. And I think South Carolina basically said we're not interested at all. So it's going to, it's maybe, we don't know what's going to happen, but I think some states are going to show they're not interested in doing it like that. they're interested in regulating, but they're not going to go to the length that New York has. I mean, you can buy big gulps in a lot of other states, and you can, you know, go to MMA matches without a problem in other cities and states too. New York is somewhere where you just can't, and so that's fine. They can be their own island of hyper-regulation if they want. That's their prerogative.
Christoph Atlas, how much longer are we going to get trolled?
Oh, I think that he'll be trolling us for years. This is the next phase of his career. The last phase was pretending to give a crap about banks moving money around in naughty ways, and this will be the next thing, is trolling the Bitcoin community.
Megan Lords.
Dude, he wants to troll us into eternity, but don't feed him. Don't feed the trolls. And, really what it comes down to is a lot of people who don't know anything about Bitcoin may be supportive of him for these kind of really nebulous reasons where, they really think that Bitcoin is a threat. And that's why it's very important to kind of rework what Malcolm X said, to take back the narrative by any means necessary.
Marnie, Melrose.
Yeah, he's not going away anytime soon. I'm with Megan on this one. Just if the system that you don't like, that is funded by your money, is not doing the things that you want to do, if you starve it of its money, right? Because it doesn't generate its own. It only gets money from what you give it. So if you don't like it, stop giving it. My peaceful revolution.
Blake Anderson.
Well, he's going to troll us for as long as he can, and the reason that I got a little bit macro in my rant is I think that the best way to respond to his micro attempts to undermine and distribute responsibility and try to attack things is undermine his authority as much as you can. Research the difference between regulations and laws, research the consent of the governed and things like that, and instead of responding to the things that he wants to talk about, undermine his position of authority in your responses as much as you possibly can. Retake the narrative and say, this guy, regardless of what his plans are, doesn't have the right nor the authority or the expertise to come into this space. And if we give him that, and if we continue to talk to him, he's going to do damage. And damage that, will take a long time to recover from, and will take a lot of businesses that may have gotten into the medium and push them out or scare people, and we shouldn't allow this to happen. It'll happen. He'll do it for as long as he can.
Excellent thoughts. Did you know this is more than just a YouTube channel? Yesterday, I gave our first copy of the blockchain to WCN fan Mitch, who will be returning with a full copy of the 24-gigabyte public ledger to Ghana. This is part of our Decentralize the World campaign that we're doing. Nick and I have been working on this for a while. We've been creating some memory sticks, and on those memory sticks we have been putting a copy of the full blockchain. I had a long chat with Mitch, not just yesterday but also today. We couldn't just leave it with a 2-hour lunch. We actually had to go on a little bit more, and he's interested in helping people in Ghana, which he says is much more amenable to things like Bitcoin. There's many more people that actually speak English there, and also you don't have a monopoly power already in play. So he's got some ideas. He's going to be setting up a shop very soon, and so there might be some opportunities. I also introduced him to an exchange in Britain. I highly encourage you all to get in touch with us. Now, it turns out that the Q&A isn't working due to a bug on YouTube, but if you want to ask any questions, you can do so in the comments below. I have been seeing some of the comments coming through already on the YouTube. I've got to open another window. Alternatively, you can tweet me at Mr. Chris Ellis and ask your questions there, and we'll have time to address them later. I'd also like to encourage you that if you enjoy the show, you may donate to this Bitcoin address. You may also notice that in the top right-hand corner of some of our guests, they have their personal Bitcoin QR codes. So if you like what somebody is saying and you want to support them and see us do this and more, please do take the time to donate. You can always go back to the show later on and pause it over the relevant person whose ideas you agree with. Now, swiftly on to issue 3. The Public Relations Department of the banking cartel, in my opinion, Citigroup, have been up to their old tricks, releasing yet another press statement, market research analysis, saying, quote, Bitcoin's price is poised for acute instability. This is due, they say, to miners and merchants creating large number of sell orders on exchanges. The argument seems to be that merchants are forced to sell Bitcoins immediately in order to stay in line with their accountancy rules, whilst miners are facing increased costs and are needing to cash out to pay their electricity bills. But I would remind people that they were trolling us since back in February. They jumped all over the Mt. Gox fiasco and came in and actually told us that the reason why Bitcoin wasn't going to work this time around is because Joe Public would run away. Did Joe Public run away, Christoph Atlas?
No, I certainly didn't find that to be the case. I think this is it's a clear bunch of FUD. It's like the squid spraying out the ink to make its getaway escape and delay its the people that are chasing after it.
Megan, Lords.
If you're listening to the people that Bitcoin threatens the most about Bitcoin's future, I think you may be doing it wrong. I mean, these aren't, they have every incentive to make Bitcoin look like a scam or look like it's failing. And also something to keep in mind too is, you don't have to focus so much on the price of Bitcoin. I know it's something that's kind of been at the forefront lately. It's been on all of our minds, but this is a good time for stability, actually. I think there really is a silver lining to this. This is things that seem like they're kind of stabilizing as far as the price goes. It's not as high as what a lot of people would like, but this allows more people to get into Bitcoin, and I think that's really important to keep in mind. So this is just for people. This is, again, going back to reshaping the narrative, where people are still kind of so dependent on the opinions of these kind of established groups, and they're the ones that Bitcoin threatens the most. So don't listen to them. Don't give them any kind of credence whatsoever.
Marnie Melrose.
Sorry, I was over there trying to figure out the Hangout Magics thing. But no, again, just don't pay attention, because there's always going to be that person out there crying wolf, crying wolf, crying wolf, crying wolf, right? And that's how market fluctuates. I mean, it's interesting. I was doing some trading on Bitfinex, and there's people that are like on purpose saying things to try to elicit an emotional reaction from you to try to drive the price up and drive the price down. This is exactly what's happening here. It's nothing different. It's just coming from a media source. But it's nothing different. It's the same thing.
Blake Anderson.
Well, yeah, I think it's a space of infinite rationalization. I mean, there's rationality, which means to be logical, and there's rationalization, which means to make excuses. And if you want to sell headlines, you go through it and you say, well, let's make some subjective excuses here and write whatever we want. Bitcoin is not an entity which can sue us for slander or libel. So be very skeptical of people that have these, strongly negative opinions, and they're like, I know what I'm talking about, and come and read my magazine. And it's like, you have to be skeptical. If it's a subjective opinion, form your own subjective opinion, and you know what? Jump into the space, make your own blog, make your own show, respond to it, respond in the comments. I mean, maybe don't respond to the trolls, because that won't be maybe the best use of your time, but we all have a voice that can be heard here, and I think that a lot of us need to lose our fear of criticism and come out and say what you think. What do you think, and what do you feel when you see the movements in the space? And don't just allow some journalist that wants to make money off of infinite rationalization to do so by rustling your jimmies. It's not, it's not productive.
Excellent expression. Theo Goodman.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you can listen to these articles, but you just have to take it with a grain of salt, like everyone said. Think about who's the messenger, and I mean, these are probably paid articles. This is just advertisement, and someone paid FUD. Someone wants to drive the price down, maybe, and then take a position at a slightly lower price. I mean, this could be Citigroup, this could be Pantera or whatever other hedge fund, and it's a normal game. I think it could be a buy signal for middle or long term, because these guys want to have the price down. They're buying in, you know. And there's also another side. Okay, you have stability if there's a higher volume. It's also nice if there's just a higher volume of transactions in general. Even if they're selling, then people are going to buy it, and with higher volume is also a good, healthy thing to have. So yeah, I think that miners are selling off. They might be right, and they might be right with a lot of people switching back to fiat. But you know what? In the article, they didn't show any evidence. It's totally intransparent. Where are the numbers? I'm really interested. I really would be very interested to see, you know, who's coming out, who's saying, okay, we have a company and we do $10,000 of Bitcoin business a month, and we switch it right out to dollars because of XYZ. I mean, that would be really interesting, but they're not showing any, they're not being transparent, so why the hell should we believe them? And we know what their inherent interest is anyway if they're a bank, so yeah,
Yeah, and
nothing
we should
new.
also remember that this is a dusty old legacy bank that has a failing business model and code that was written in the 1980s that they're fast trying to replicate in newer languages like Java. So we should take it with a bucket of salt. Now, I did have some thoughts. I noticed on a lot of the forums, like Bitcoin Talk Forum, for example, people were saying that they were trying to drive the price down. You've already alluded to that. I had a question of myself, which is, do you guys have concerns about capital gains tax? In theory, every time you make a purchase with a Bitcoin, you should, in theory, write that down and pay tax on that. What do you think, Christoph Atlas?
Well, I haven't bought a whole lot of stuff with Bitcoin. Honestly, at this year, I'm mostly looking at capital losses. So, you know, but I think that people should try to play it safe. We're not quite at the point where we can ignore these kind of tax rules. The anonymity or the privacy technology is not quite there yet. It's still very cumbersome for people to use. And there's going to come a day when the state is able to examine the blockchain and look for people that are not following their dictum. So I would try to play it safe, talk to your accountant and your lawyer and whoever else you need to talk to in order to make sure that your risk tolerance is commensurate with the amount of risk that you're taking on as far as paying taxes goes.
Megan, Lords.
Yeah, I think it's important to maintain a grounded approach to this. Definitely don't do anything that could cause you to be thrown in a cage. You know, I support tax resistance in theory, but I pay all of my taxes that I feel are, you know, I owe the government to, you know, keep it running and all the important things it does. So, yeah, I mean, you know, be smart about it. I haven't made a whole lot of money on Bitcoin this year, to be honest. So, I mean, it's not something I'm super concerned with. But yeah, right now we're not quite there as far as being able to completely anonymize things. It's pretty difficult, and until that becomes more of a possibility, be smart. But you know, also do what your conscience tells you. I mean, I think the position of a tax resistor is an ethical one. I think it's something that, you know, more people should be advocating for. I mean, really what's funding the empire is us paying taxes, and it's causing a lot of widespread destruction throughout the rest of the world. So, you know, I think there's an ethical and moral argument to be made for tax resistance, and ultimately I think it comes down to your own conscience and look within yourself and realize, you know, is this worth the risk for your you know, morality, basically. So, you know, pay your taxes or don't pay your taxes. It's really up to you. You know, do a cost-benefit analysis or something if you have to.
Pay your taxes based on how good a job you think your government is doing. Marnie Melrose.
Oh, I'm gonna laugh at that one. Yeah, I pay my taxes, but I also make sure that I have a really good accountant who makes sure that, you know, I follow all of the rules so that I pay as little as possibly possible. You can
Rules.
still, you know, go within the system, but be educated about you know, what you can and cannot do to maximize your, you know, the amount of taxes that you pay. And so yes, do pay your taxes. Luckily, I have been in a situation this year that I've had a lot of losses. So, and this is one thing that I don't quite even, it doesn't feel comfortable to me, is that if I show too much losses and they're going to pay me money, right? It does feel weird that somebody else is paying me. That kind of feels weird because it's actually your money that they're taking, by the way. So, you know, I'd rather not get paid anything, right? But that's just me. Anyways, moving on.
Excellent points. Blake Anderson. And this was more a question, it wasn't about you guys' personal tax liabilities, it was more like, is this going to have a chilling effect? I don't want you to incriminate yourselves on air.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have to pay all of my taxes, even if I was so offended and sickened by the actions of the country that I live in. I have my upstairs office here that's in my living room. I have therapy trampolines and stuff. I have a child. My son Oliver has autism, and I can't risk being thrown in a cage. But at the same time, if I could not pay my taxes and put them into an account for him so that he can be okay if anything that ever happened to me, I would really like to do that. But I can't write my tax office and say, I have a disabled son and I would like to put money into an account. They say, no, we have services that are provided to the government. But my wife's mother works with disabled people. She's worked in the industry for a long, long time. And guess what? Every single time any kind of budget needs to be cut, they cut the budgets for the disabled people that get services because people that are disabled can't come and pick it and do things and make it so that their unhappiness is known. So I really, really, really feel, maybe more so than your average person, like I am very, very much trapped in a situation where I have to pay for something that I know will not be around to benefit him when he gets older, and I have to not be able to put as much money into an account as I would like to make it so that his future can be secure, and that really, really scares me.
Yeah, you brought it down to a really, really serious point. Thank you, Blake. Theo Goodman.
Yeah, I don't know if I have really a lot to add, except that maybe if you pay taxes on a yearly basis, then maybe we'll see a lot of FUD articles around December, so that by the end of the year, you know, you'll have a loss, and then in January it can just go up again. That's how I would do it if I was a bank.
Very good. Moving on to our final issue of the show. It looks like Mad Bitcoins is having a great time at Burning Man. According to Nelly Bowles, the Bitcoin camp has been hijacked and rebranded as Dogecoin Camp. Sitting under some tarpaulin in the middle of a desert are some crypto nerds sharing utopian dreams of a future without banks and banksters. Nelly looks like she got stuck in with some deep journalism too, saying, there is a conversation in the tent that raged freely from, oh, I rode the wave up, man, and we could have all been millionaires. Did you hear about Bitcoin? Far more advanced than Darkcoin. What are your views on sidechains? One guy is reported to have said, I'm the Messiah and money grows on trees. My question to you is Burning Man better than Porkfest? Megan Lords.
As a longtime festival enthusiast, I still have not been to Burning Man, which it's maybe disappointing to other burners, but I've just never really seen the appeal of paying an extremely inflated price to survive in the desert for a week, whereas Porkfest I have been to a couple times. It's the same length, only you're in New Hampshire in the summertime, which is really quite pleasant. It does get a little bit cold and it can be a little bit rainy, but it's way cheaper to attend. There are a bunch of agorist vendors that take all types of barter materials, from silver to Bitcoin to just handmade goods. I think the barter economies are pretty similar in both places, at least from what I've heard of Burning Man and the people I know who've gone there. It's very barter-centric. So since I haven't gone, I don't know that I could quite compare it, but I really, really dig Porkfest. And while we were all there, Thomas was incessantly telling us how much better Burning Man was. But I just really can't see that. I mean, compared to the experience of Porkfest, and it's quite a different crowd too. You know, it's a couple different. You know, there's a lot of different ideologies involved in both. But I think with Porkfest, oh, I think you do see an anarchic kind of ideology in both, which I think is really interesting. But I'm gonna have to side with Porkfest. I've gone a couple years in a row. It's way more affordable to go, and I drive all the way up from Florida to New Hampshire, so it's quite a haul for me. It'd probably be about the same as if I drove out to Burning Man too. Only there are more amenities. It's a little bit nicer, and it's a lot less expensive for me. So. Gonna side with Porkfest.
Very good. Marnie Melrose, please.
Well, I have never been to Burning Man. I got my QR code looking. Yeah, yay.
The other side. The other side.
The other side? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Anyways, I've never been there, but I've aspired to go to Burning Man for a very, very long time because I have a lot of friends. As a matter of fact, my roommate is over there. I'm so freaking jealous. But you know what I like about Burning Man that I've heard anyways from my friends out there is that there's a lot of tech people. And, you know, that's primarily what I am is tech, right? That's just that whole world that I've been engulfed in tech, you know, for 30 years now. And so I love being around people in tech, and I've heard that there's been a lot of great deals that have been done, you know, out there in the middle of the desert. And, you know, one thing my grandfather used to always say to me was never do business with anybody until you played a round of golf with them. Because you'll know right away if that's the type of person that when they get pushed, are they going to be good or bad, right? And so putting somebody in a round of golf is, you know, that way of pushing somebody. Imagine being in the dirt for a week. That's got to push people, right? No wonder the business deals get done out there because you're going to see people at their best, you're going to see people at their worst, and especially at their worst because sand is sand, you know? So if somebody comes out the other side and they're still happy and they're fun to be around and you like their ethics, then you know that to me is where those really strong bonds of friendship would be created, lifelong friendships, right? Because you know that that person is going to act a certain way under those circumstances. So I'm a burning girl.
Thank you very much. And moving on, Blake Anderson.
Well, I went to Porkfest this year, and it was absolutely the most fun I've ever had in my entire life. I got to hang out with Megan, which was awesome, and Joseph, and Jeffrey Tucker was there, Patrick Byrne was there, Julia, who we were talking about earlier, was there, Jeff Berwick was there.
Who else was there? Was anyone else there?
I could list almost everybody there: Ernie Hancock, Joby Weeks, Jordan Page. But I would forget somebody that I would feel so bad. But it was such an amazing and fun experience that I've never been to Burning Man, and I think it would be really, really fun too. But Porkfest was so much fun that there's no way that I would be able to rant enough about how much fun it was. So I'll just have to end it right there.
Very good, Theo Goodman. I don't suppose you've been to either of them, but have a stab at it anyway.
No, I haven't been to either of them. But I think at Burning Man there's more goggles and top hats than at Porkfest. But I can't say for sure since I've never been. But I'm guessing that that's one small difference, you know, from what I've seen of Burning Fest. And I guess the music is a little different too. But yeah, I think both are really interesting. And I think, yeah, not better, but different. That's just how it is. It's just different styles. You know, different. I mean, you know, some people are kind of anarchist style. Maybe they don't really call themselves anarchists per se, but you know, it's kind of a big experiment. I don't know how much it costs to go to Burning Man, but I think I remember that it was kind of expensive. But they do have that. What do they have? That leave no trace kind of ethics. So they like clean up all their shit, even though they paid a lot of money. So not only you got to pay money to live in the desert, in a refugee camp that you brought yourself, and you got to clean up all your shit. So, I mean, you know, if that's fun, then why not, you know?
Yeah, it's actually about $400 to get in. And Tom, made it pretty clear when he was at Porkfest how good Burning Man was. And he kept saying everything's free and everything's free at Porkfest. You've got this kind of free market. And it's like, well, it's not free. It's like $400 to get in, and then everything's kind of paid for. Christoph Atlas.
I think being stuck out in the desert where money is disallowed and there's no internet sounds like some kind of libertarian fever dream, and a very, very negative one. So I'm going to have to go with Porkfest, who admittedly has extremely poor internet reception, but as a child raised on the internet, I'm going to have to go with the slightly better Wi-Fi reception than the one that has none at all.
Yeah, it really was like a crime against humanity at Porkfest with the internet, because the thing is, it worked just well enough that it really, really annoyed you. So you were constantly moving around, and everyone knew where the patches were. There were patches on the camp where you could get it, so everyone kind of converged on those areas. And if you were with like AT&T, you were out of luck because you couldn't get it anywhere. And guess which provider I went with. Yeah, I think I want to pick up on something that was in the article, which is that all that they talked about in that conversation was the price, and it was all about rumors and opinion and have you heard about this, and it's this kind of tribalism thing that I've been going on about for some time now. Although they did mention some more ideology later on, one guy was saying that maybe these big skyscrapers could be repurposed and used to house homeless people, right? Once we've done away with the bankers, where are they going to go? Of course, I don't know where the bankers are going to go. So maybe that's the exit question. Christoph Atlas, where are all the bankers going to go once we chase the witch doctors out of the glass temples?
Oh, man, I don't know. They're going to have to start up some kind of new scam. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to look like. Maybe they'll have a Bitcoin Ponzi scheme, or I'm sure they'll find something. But, yeah, I don't know about housing homeless people in a giant abandoned tower. May not be the best way to go, but I guess the bankers will be, betting down with them.
I mean, it's a hell of a utopian dream, isn't it? Megan Lords.
The bankers can go to hell as far as I'm concerned. Now, later, during, at any time. Yeah.
Excellent. Marnie.
Okay, you guys are going to be surprised by my reaction. But you know what? I do know some of the people in the regulation arena, and the people themselves are actually not that bad. It's just that their worldview is a little bit different, right? And I think that it's a matter of educating them on a different worldview, and maybe take them to Porkfest or take them to Burning Man or something to just like crack their heads open a little bit and give them a little bit of a different look on the world, because I think everybody's redeemable. Maybe that's just the naivety of being a Canadian because we're just so damn nice. But yeah, that's what I think.
I'd like to volunteer to round up all the bankers and leave them out in the desert to have their own Burning Man festival.
Yeah, it reminds me actually rather of Moses. Moses took the Israelites out to the desert. I mean, obviously it's just a fairy tale, but the idea that the lesson that it was trying to impart was that it was teaching people to live within their means, because for too long people have got used to all their spoils. Blake Anderson.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we should quote Chuck Palahniuk a little bit and say maybe the bankers will have to go out and cure strips of venison on some abandoned superhighway, and that'll maybe help to reduce their ego a little bit.
Excellent. Theo Goodman.
Well, every soldier is a potential deserter, and every banker is a potential normal guy or girl. So I don't know. Maybe they would some will go to the desert and form their little bank tribe, and others would just, hang out with us. I think that, like I said, all of them have the potential to change. And I think a lot of them are just in kind of zombie mode, just working. We've talked about it before. They're not really thinking. They're just like, okay, I'm going to work, and then I'm going to have enough money, and then I'm going to retire, and that's great, and I don't want to think about anything else.
And they've been they've been brainwashed, you know, probably by their parents or something. And so we can't really necessarily hold them accountable. All we can do is maybe help re-educate. We could put them in re-education camps.
Oh my God, this is starting to sound a little bit like, what was that guy's name? Does anyone remember that guy's name in the 20th century? What was his name? That German guy.
But that's why I said the thing with the soldier. So I know a guy that is a deserter, and that's what he said. He said, yeah, every soldier is a potential deserter. So okay, they signed up to kill people. That's true, but you also have to look at it. When you talk to people, I mean, you could just go up to every soldier and be like, I'm gonna crack your head open or whatever. But you know, they also see how shitty it is, you know, and every banker also has the potential of, you know, coming to their senses. It doesn't mean they will, especially if you have a vested interest in continuing the system as it is. However, they also see how it is on the inside. So, yeah. Someone wrote potential burner. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, every banker, that rhymes. Every banker is a potential burner. And so Burning Man will make a lot of money, and it will be bigger than ever.
Yeah, I actually think it's quite funny that I bet a lot of people in finance actually go to things like this as a kind of a catharsis, you know. I do find it really interesting. I said the other day on Twitter that it's weird the way our modern civilization is basically run by a bunch of witch doctors. We put our faith in these people that tell us stories about how they can predict the future and how their financial models are perfect. And yet every time they fail, every fiat currency in history has failed. And it just beggars belief. I don't know why we put them all in charge. I really don't.
They're all going to go to Burning Man and make their naked short selling camp.
And like we've said, you know, it's not even the majority of them. A lot of my friends that sold out and went into banking, they call it the golden handcuffs, that you go in and you say to yourself, right, it's only going to be 10 years, and then 8 years in a recession hits and you lose everything, and then the house prices, like in the UK, they escape your ability to be able to keep up with them. And I was watching Jared Diamond the other day, the geographer and the anthropologist on YouTube. He has a great documentary and book called Guns, Germs and Steel, and in it, about 20 minutes into the documentary, he shows a native from Papua New Guinea building his own shelter in 2 hours with nothing but his bare hands. Right? This guy can give himself shelter from nature that every human being needs in 2 hours with nothing but his hands in the jungle. It takes us 30 years to pay off a damn mortgage. Well, except, of course, it doesn't really. It's just that they force us to go on this crack lolly. They make us pay over a longer period of time than is absolutely necessary just so that they can extort. And friends of mine I'm in my 30s, my friends are, you know, all the same age, they've been getting into it, and they said, look, once they get you on the crack pipe, that's it, you're stuck, you're a captive audience now. You've got all these different businesses that are interested in upselling you the bathroom and the carpet, and of course they know that you're going to buy because you're captive. You've got no choice. You already have what's known as sunk cost. You've already put cost into this, you don't want to get out, and it just becomes like a parasite, like a financial tapeworm in your gut. Very good. Wow, that was a pretty good stint. So we have had some comments. Let me get up a screen share here. Situation. So Chad says, who is greater, Satoshi Nakamoto or Albert Einstein, and why? Go on, Christoph.
I'd say in the long term, I mean, you know, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. Which one's the superior scientist or intellectual genius? I don't know. But in terms of which one's going to have a longer term positive impact on having a civilized society, I think Satoshi takes it hands down. You know, one of the first things that Albert Einstein contributed to was nuclear weapons. And so I think that Bitcoin is a less morally neutral technology than that which Albert Einstein discovered.
Yeah, and of course it was his letter to Harry S. Truman as well, making him aware of the fact that the atom can be split and it can cause this amount of devastation. But I think that, in my opinion, is that Einstein had, you know, if it weren't for Einstein, it weren't for Niels Bohr, we wouldn't have these things. GPS wouldn't work, the computer wouldn't work. So it's very, very hard to gauge in the long term. Blake, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to gauge, and I think that Satoshi, the group of people or the individual, whoever stood on Einstein's shoulders. So Einstein, you know, relativity, and then as he was dying, unified field theory, and the things that he was able to understand and comprehend, and that was parlayed into what Satoshi was able to discover. But if I get like really, really macro and theoretical here, Satoshi is all of us. Satoshi is the one force of the universe, and we've tried different names for it, God or Tao or Brahman, but it really is you, and we're all different playings of this energy. And really what it comes down to is that when you try to compare things that are uncomparable like this, you miss the big picture and the understanding of really, really what's happening here. And we are all this playing of this one energy, and that's why artificial intelligence research really hasn't come along that fast, that far, because when we're trying to make intellectual artificial intelligence, we're trying to make a closed system with enough information to become self-aware, and we're increasingly finding out that that's not possible, that what we need to do is tap into this unified field or consciousness and then make a receiver, and that is what's going to be intelligent. And Tesla made a lot of research and discovery in this direction, but I think as we continue to understand that more and more as a society, the less we'll ask questions like this. So I think it's a great question because it leads us to think, but I think that the answer of that question is more or less going to fractally slip through our fingers.
Fractally slip through our fingers. A lovely bit of Mandelbrot there. And I would also say that Poincaré deserves a little bit of credit as well for the discovery of general theory. I believe that was the theory of heavy objects. Einstein just kind of like beat him to it by publishing first, I think. So Aussie Bitcoin says, regarding capital gains, Australia lets you transact up to 10,000 Australian dollars of Bitcoin per financial year without having to make records of paying capital gains. That's really interesting. And you know what? I'd like to hear from more people. You can check out the World Crypto Network subreddit. You can come here and you can post up. I'd like to know what the local laws are. And also, don't just tell us the laws, because obviously we can just Google those, but tell us your experiences with dealing with the tax authorities as well, because every tax authority is slightly kind of idiosyncratic. Tim Frey, hey Tim, he says the whole reason they called it property is that you don't get to claim losses against gains. You are not allowed, for example, to sell a 2-year-old car and claim a loss against what you originally paid for it. It's property, not investment like a stock. Capital gains, capital loss. Okay, that's interesting. So it looks like there are some pretty good tax advisors out there among us. And we have a comment from Mohammed who says, should the funeral, I guess he's talking about Hal Finney, be paid for in Bitcoin only?
I think it would be a nice gesture. I mean, I don't know if we could force it or whatever, but I think if people want to donate to help cover the cost of his funeral or cryogenic process, that would be a very nice gesture.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, what have we got also in my Twitter feed? Did you just find a use for the silver bullet, Mr. Craig? Ah, very good memory. Yeah, so Tim actually gave me a silver bullet. He was handing them out at PorcFest, and of course I've still got it on my desk here somewhere. If these goggles weren't so steamed up, I'd pick it up. So it's time for your story of the week, or your predictions. You know, the thing you never prepare for. In fact, now come to think about it, I was so busy with the script, I didn't even prepare for it. How embarrassing. Anybody have a story of the week? Blake Anderson, I bet you do.
I was speaking to the Free Ross Defense Fund today, and they were asking me about advice. There's a Twitter handle, Satoshi000001, and he was going to collect some money for the Free Ross defense, and he said all the money I'm collecting goes to Ross's defense, and it kind of feels like, you know, well, I'm going to collect a whole bunch of money for Ross, and I'll make sure they get it. So unless he contacts Lynn or somebody in the defense fund, I would implore you not to donate there, expecting for it to go to the Free Ross defense in the campaign. And in case you don't know what I'm talking about, Ross Ulbricht has been charged as being the Dread Pirate Roberts who was running the Silk Road, and they are just dumping all of this exploration on him. They're dumping all of these charges on him and trying to intimidate him into pleading guilty, to use him as someone that they're going to say, if you make an online market with free exchange, then what happened to him is going to happen to you. And of course, we already have Craigslist and things like that, so it shouldn't be that hard for them to figure out what's going on, but for whatever reason, they're trying to pin everything that ever happened on the Silk Road onto Ross, and they don't have really good evidence, and the evidence that they do have is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. So if you're not familiar with the Ross Ulbricht case, I would familiarize yourself with it, and once you are familiar, please don't donate through anybody that's not associated with the defense fund.
Yeah, and I put up as you were talking there, Blake. I put up the free Ross Ulbricht legitimate Bitcoin address that you can donate to. I'll put it in the description after the show. And this is the website. You can see they've made quite a lot of money already. It's about $51,000. Oh no, actually in total, that's just that one address, $130,000, over $250,000 goal. I met Lynn at PorkFest. We spent a lot of time talking philosophically. I mean, I've made my views very plain. Don't dare compete with the government or they will get angry. You know, you've got, what is it, a $26 billion cost of the war on drugs. I thought wars were supposed to end. Well, no, apparently not this one. Apparently there are too many military contracts that need to be paid. And then along comes a hacker and he just makes a Craigslist site with a reputation system like eBay and takes away the majority of negative externalities of the drug trade. I mean, this guy should be a hero. I don't know if he did all that other stuff, but I think it's highly suspect that they keep dropping those charges of those other things. Obviously, we'll have to wait for the trial to come out. I wasn't there. I didn't see it. But assuming that, you know, whoever Dread Pirate Roberts was, whoever did that original innovation deserves to be heralded and actually is an example to citizens everywhere. Any other stories or predictions of the week?
Go ahead, Megan.
Yes, I wanted to add on to Blake's point about Ross Ulbricht's case. There were other people who were caught up in the Silk Road thing too. There was actually someone, a participant in the Free State Project, which is a project in New Hampshire that's trying to get 20,000 people to move to New Hampshire to influence the political scene. His name was Andrew Michael Jones. He was actually in Virginia. He was arrested along with a lot of other people involved, and they're trying to raise funds for his defense too. So I think it's important to keep in mind that Ross really needs help. He's facing the kingpin charge, which is the most serious charge, but also look into the other people who were involved and caught up in this too, because they're being charged with some really ridiculous things and their lives are at stake as far as, you know, being thrown in a cage for the rest of their lives. They're all facing very serious charges for doing what should be considered heroic acts. So look into Andrew Michael Jones. They have a you can donate to help him too. He has a defense fund. He's taking Bitcoin and credit cards and PayPal. So definitely look that up. It's drewsdefense.org. It's a fundraising site. And yeah, definitely just get informed about the others who were involved because it swept up quite a few people, including Ross.
Very good. Christoph Atlas, did you have something?
Yeah, a couple stories briefly, but I'll just also say, assuming that the Satoshi person, who I wonder if it's Benjamin Losky, is stealing from the Ross Ulbricht campaign, that's a pretty shitty thing to do. I remember Free Aid got hacked and a bunch of their funds were stolen, and it's hard to be more of a douchebag than to steal Bitcoins from a charity or from someone's defense fund. I mean, come on, people. Really, that's pretty damn seedy. You know, at least steal it from, at least be the Robin Hood and steal it from, you know, the wealthy fat cat bankers or something like that. I'm sure they all have stupid passwords for their bank accounts, and you could go in there and get some bucks. So go do that instead of picking on charities. That's just weak sauce. Two stories for me. One is that recently there was a new privacy-centric coin called Bitcoin Dark, which so far I think is the dumbest name for the privacy-centric altcoins. But the technology is interesting. They put out a white paper and I've started going through it, and it's pretty cool. Potentially the technology could be adapted to Bitcoin as well, and I'm always really interested in those altcoins whose technology can be adapted to Bitcoin without these kind of like major changes to Bitcoin, or can be layered on top of Bitcoin. So that's pretty neat. I myself am finishing up my review of Darkcoin, and right now I'm working on kind of a document or a white paper or whatever you want to call it, just kind of discussing my findings for the design of Darkcoin and its privacy technology called DarkSend Plus, and hopefully that will be going out in the near future as well. And then I'll be wrapping up the code review findings shortly thereafter. So for those that are watching and interested in an update in the Darkcoin stuff, that's what I got.
Very good. Marnie, got anything for us?
No. No, I'm baking over here. I am melting. I am
You should wear
melting.
these goggles, man. Whew. I don't know how he does it, but I like it. Blake. Oh, sorry, we've had you, Blake. Sorry, Theo.
I want to go again.
Okay, you can.
I just want to say I'm
Let's see what
vitamin D
Theo's got.
deficient.
Oh, Theo, tell us how your Doge party thing's going.
I do have
Okay.
That's what I wanted to say. Go on. You have something to say?
Marnie, go on.
Okay. I have a guest who is kind of near and dear on my show next week. Farishte Farrow from the Women's Annex. I absolutely love what those guys are doing for Afghani women. And again, going back to the Navy SEALs, and it's found that the educated women will not send their sons into the Taliban. Right? So anything that we can do to help educate Afghani women in business, in Bitcoin, in anything, I think is really a step forward. So that's my show next Thursday, noon Pacific.
And what channel is it?
The World Crypto Network. And it's
Oh, very good.
Midas.
Great.
Yeah.
Midas Money as well. Very good, very good.
So we heard that the Burning Man Bitcoin tent or whatever is been taken over by Dogecoin, and well, it's created it into a kind of Doge party. And if you head over to dogeparty.io, you can create your own crypto assets, so your own tokens, and you can be the authority of these tokens, and you can be a dictator, and do whatever you want with it. So since we've been discussing BitShares and all that, I decided to make a very smart token. It's called BotShares X, and as you can see, there's this little thing moving. That means that some are being moved around the network. So you got to get them while they're hot.
Oh yeah.
If you post your Doge Party address, I'll give you some free for now. They might go up in value though.
Can I come in
What
and naked
price do you
short
reckon they'll go
these?
to?
What now?
He wants to short them naked.
I want to short them naked. I'm teasing. I would never
You
do
can,
that.
hey, you're free to get naked, and I'll give you some. You can do the short naked thing. And I'm gonna make so BotShares X wants to announce a partnership with BitScares and BitLobby token, which also is in the move right now. So you got to get some, and if you want, you can also get some Noise or some Theo token, and just post your address, and I'll give you some. And depending on how I feel, I might send out dividends. So you just come down here and you can send dividends out to the people that have your cool crypto asset. And all of these are not normal assets. These are smart assets. So keep that in mind when you give.
Can I make one that's like singular and then just trace its like exchange around the net and see who has the one coin? Would it work with that?
Well, you could. I think. Well, you'd have to pay fees. I think. So I don't know if that would work. But you could make it.
Yeah, I've got it.
You could make one and have it divisible. I don't know. You can also make it callable, so you can say at a certain date that you'll buy it back for a certain price. So yeah, so you can be your own regulator here. And this is, if you're going to be your own regulator, then you should just do it with your own little crypto token.
It's like a Nintendo. Like a Nintendo Lawski.
Like a Super Nintendo Losky coin.
Like
That was what I was gonna say too. And then like I'll recall it for like
It's like a
negative.
real life adventure game, and you can mismanage people's expectations. You
Exactly.
can pump the market. You can ruin families. You can do all kinds of shit with this.
Exactly, it's great. So I've burned it into the Doge Party system, but it wasn't ready to show. So I was just showing my wallet, so I can prove that I'm the dictator of those tokens. I've already burned NYCX, because if you put X on the end of something, it's cool now.
That's right.
And NYC was already taken, so I'll give those out too if anyone posts their Doge Party address.
I think Benjamin Losky absolutely should create his own Super Nintendo Losky coin on the Doge Party network and leave Bitcoin alone.
Yeah, regulate his own, see how it works out, see how it goes, see how easy it is to make a currency that goes all over the world and starts being used, and then have somebody come in and then as a third-party unelected official come and try to regulate it, see how he feels.
Great stuff. Right, I did come up with a story, actually. This was going to be issue number 5, but I don't know where to start with this, man. All right, so Dan Larimer of BitShares announces sometime on the 15th He says that he's going to do a partnership with Ethereum, which is the sexier Bitcoin 2.0. They had way more PR funding. They had way more kind of like, hype and pizzazz around it, and they kind of stole a lot of the thunder. So he kind of let slip, right, that it's like, oh yeah, we're partnering up, me and Vitalik are really cool and shit. And then he had to make like an apology. In fact, it wasn't even Dan, it was someone else. And so, BitShares guy here, sorry we caused such a stir. We are not evil or greedy. No one said you were, mate. Dan just sucks at PR. And I love this, right? So he basically looks at this picture, look, we do like each other. We're playing crazy golf. It's like we're all friends. And, everyone chimes in. It's like, no, look, it's all open source, man. It's not zero sum. We can all profit from this. But yet again, here's another post that's come up in the last day. So anyone watching the BitShares webinar right now, we did not endorse or partner with BitShares as an organization or project. We simply expressed our willingness to share information and work together on common problems on friendly terms. Basically, we're just mates, and we're going to talk about some code. Maybe we can talk about some Python, or maybe we can talk about some Serpent, just over beers or something. We never actually said we were going to partner. Woo! Yeah, so I think my prediction is that, everyone's struggling right now. The price is being propped up by hodlers like you and me who just buy, and we believe in this thing, and we're not selling. We refuse to sell. And I used a Bitcoin ATM today, but just to test it out for a friend. Otherwise, I'm pure, I'm virginal. I haven't sold any Bitcoin. Once in crypto, stay in crypto, in my opinion, and just use it to buy real everyday things like food and fuel and entertainment, the kind of stuff we actually need so that we can stop using the dollar cross all the time. Groceries, absolutely.
Yeah, give it away to the uninitiated as much as you possibly can so that they have a material investment in it, absolutely.
Yeah, but as I said on Megan's show the other day, the thing you need to be stacking right now is trust, because when demand for money goes through the roof, that's what people are really craving. And when they can only trust something as basic as a line item on a balance sheet, or as a liability, as we like to call it in the banking sector apparently, then that reputation systems are at all-time lows, that they are very underestimated, and you should go out and make friends and be communal and stop trying to get rich off of other people's vulnerabilities. Well, it looks like we're out of time. Until next time, bye-bye.